So, hi, Jess. I'm here with Jess Reid. She is a personal coach. Jess, I'm going to let you kind of jump in and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So, Jen, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited for you with your new podcast and just honored to be here. I am Jess Reid, and my coaching practice is called Wild Wellness with Jess. I'm a certified life coach and wellness coach since 2017. I actually started my coaching practice as a side passion until I went full time in 2020. I help people come home to the wisdom of nature and their intuition to create a life that they actually like. The people that I love to work with are who I like to call closeted woo-woo wounded workaholics.
I love
That
that.
Me too, because that definitely used to be me. And since I walked that journey, I love to be the coach, which actually the word coach means vehicle. It's like a stage coach, like Cinderella's pumpkin. The coach who helps move others from where they are now to where they want to be. And
Oh, wow. Yeah.
yeah, I've been on this journey of creating a life that I actually like since 2013, when I experienced a 50-pound weight loss on keto. And it actually created this domino effect in my life of what I like to call the relentless pursuit of finally truly meeting my own needs and creating a life that I actually like. And I actually started my coaching practice as a weight loss coach and a keto coach. And at that time, I called my practice Self-Care Keto. And I did that for 6 years. But actually, within the last year, I made a major pivot in my business to calling it Wild Wellness because of this life-changing experience that I had with actually psychedelic plant medicine. And I did it safely and legally overseas with magic mushrooms. And this wild journey gave me such a direct experience with the reality of liking life, that it is the ultimate nature of reality. Like,
Mhm.
we're getting really woo-woo here, but for me, this was such a huge transformation for me. It was like, why are we all here? Like, because we want to be and because we like it. Why did God or source or consciousness create all of this, if you believe that, right? But the same reason, why do we create our lives and these worlds and these stories that we live inside of, these relationships, these children, if you have them, these careers, these projects, these ideas, our homes, because we want to and because we like it. And this is something called sovereignty. And it's not a word that we hear all the time, but it basically means to be a free agent to do whatever you want to do simply because it pleases you. And to me, this is the ultimate value proposition that everything leads back to. But how many of us are actually living that experience? I think it's the rarity, and I'm on a mission to change that. I think most of us feel the opposite of sovereignty. I think instead we feel stuck, we feel tired, miserable, burnt out, resentful, frustrated, angry, and we wind up self-soothing with all of these coping mechanisms as substitutes for the thing that we really want, which is freedom and pleasure and living in alignment with our values. And even though for me, I've been pursuing this life that I actually like for quite a long time now, I know that I always struggled with it. I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with this, but I always struggled with it because it massively bumped up against what I call the resistance of my conditioning, particularly for me, a very high control religious upbringing that I know I've shared with you. And we've kind of
Mhm.
talked about this, but I was taught that pleasure was not to be pursued. Actually, that pleasure is selfish, wrong, dangerous, even sinful. At best, maybe pleasure might be allowed, but always and only secondarily to being productive,
Mhm.
being used by God for God's glory. And, you don't have to have the same upbringing as me to be taught some version of this to pursue productivity over pleasure. But I think that this inevitably leads us into self-sacrifice and all of those feelings of stuckness instead of sovereignty. And we've all been taught some version of, like, basically these same four lies that I'd love to share and expand on. But basically they're that: number one, I don't know enough. Number two, I don't have enough. Number three, I cannot, like, it's not allowed. And number four is I should not, it's wrong. And so I help my clients detach from these lies that are keeping us stuck so that we can create a life that we actually like.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. There's so much to unpack there. I mean, we could have like 3 other podcasts to go
Yes.
into all of that because,
I know. It's
and I
like, what do
know,
you do? Okay, are you ready? Here you go.
yeah, and I love it. I love it. And it's so true that, that's, and we've talked about this too. The reason why I started my podcast, because for so many of us, we get to a point in our life, and I would love to see some statistics, and maybe that's something I could pursue, but I really feel like it's later rather than sooner in our lives. And when I say that, it's not like we're finding this out in our 20s,
Yeah.
because we're in the zone, right? We're doing the thing, we're going to college, or we're trying to land a job, or we're trying to start that part of our life on our own. And so many of us wake up not until we're in our 40s or our 50s or even later, and we're like, what the hell have I been doing with my
Yes.
life? And it's like, I'm definitely going through this right now. That's why I have so many things I'm pursuing outside of my day job that are really helping me get in touch with what's important to me, what I align with, what makes me happy. And I love how you said that, it's part of this breaking. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but it's like you're breaking free from this construct that you've been held in or held down by for so many years. And just being able to acknowledge that it's okay to find what is important and what you like to do. Like you said, like, what do I like to do?
That's it. Yeah.
And so tell me, kind of back up a little bit and tell me, when you started this, you were working a full-time job.
Yes.
You were starting to coach on the side.
Yeah.
So tell me, in your mind, where along the lines you realized that, okay, I need something else. I want something else. And coaching, help, personal coaching is where I want, is the path that I want to go on, which ultimately led to this is your full-time job, or your full-time passion. I don't even want to call it a job, because it probably doesn't feel like a job. It's your life's work, right?
Yeah.
But tell me, how did that start to percolate in your mind, where, okay, I want more, and this is the path that I want to go down?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd have to share a little bit more of my background, which is that in some way, shape, or form, I've always been this person who is like a very one-on-one helper, like, and kind of like, I might use the word healer, but people have always come to me for advice and kind of like for this mothering, like even when I was a teenager, I was like the mother of the group. Like, people would ask for advice, and I didn't know much about it back then. Now I know, like, with things like human design and different tools that I'm really passionate about, that this was like an inherent gift inside of me to be able to see things differently and clearly in a way that is helpful to other people. I wound up getting married very young in life. I got married at 20 years old. Like I said, I was brought up in a very religious upbringing, and I went to a Christian college, and that was kind of the thing that you do when you're, in Christian college. You get married young. I married my husband, who at the time was pursuing being a pastor. And so here I am now in this life that I never thought I would be in. I'm a pastor's wife, right? And I didn't even realize also at that time, but that gifting served that arena so well. My husband is a lot more like this, like, visionary leader, like really like forest for the trees. And I've always been like this one-on-one person. And so he'd be out there like saying, like, this is what we're going to do. And this is what, God, and getting everybody excited and yada, yada. And I'm like, hey, you want to go to Starbucks here? Like, what are you journaling about? Like, here's what I'm journaling about. And so this was always something, like, I've just been a one-on-one person that loves to help people change their lives. And one of the things that brought me the most joy, even when I was doing that, even though I can see now that there was a lot of things now that I don't feel comfortable with, that I felt were, I didn't realize at the time, but they were very high control and things that I wouldn't choose again. But the beauty of being inside of that atmosphere that I'm so grateful for and love, was that it continued to develop this gift inside of me of that my calling is like to share wisdom with people, and then the lights come on and then they just change their lives. I'm like, oh my God, like, gives me goosebumps. I have goosebumps right now. Like, that's me. And so I always wanted to have like an administrative job, like an office job. I don't know, like ever since I was a kid. So it's funny to say, but both my parents were actually entrepreneurs, but I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. But we had this little home office in our house growing up. And like, I just used to play in there. Like I used to be on the typewriter. I had all like the sticky notes, yada, yada. And like, to me, working in an office was like so cool. And when I was in high school, I had an office job, which was rare for being in high school, but I worked in this like this doctor's office, and I like really just loved the office atmosphere. And so naturally, I just kind of moved towards administration. I'm also like a super organized person. But this is where I would say, you know, I talk to people about the zone of excellence versus the zone of genius. So like my zone of excellence is like, I am so an administrator. Like I am so organized. I'm like type 1 on the Enneagram, like really like the improver. Like I'm like, I deliver on shit, I get shit done, like, and I can pull people together and do all of that. And so I wound up, you know, basically moving into that kind of arena in administration and higher education. I did that for years. And then in 2013, I had like this weight loss journey that I referenced with you. This was like such a big instigator of like, okay, I actually have the power to change my life. Like, and I think that's really what people, why people struggle with weight loss or any goal or whatever. It's just because we're so disempowered, right? And when we prove to ourselves like, holy crap, I just changed my reality. I just changed my body. Like what else can I do? Right. And of course, there's a lot that goes along with that, but that was such this domino effect in me of like, oh, my life is so much better. How much better could it be? Like, how much more could I actually like my life? And because specifically like my journey involved like keto and weight loss, naturally I was like, well, I want to help other people, because this was like the doorway for me, and something that I struggled with my whole life. And it brought me so much freedom. And I was like, I want to do this for other people. I want to become like a nutritionist meets a therapist and like put it together. And like literally probably like the next year, I was already dreaming of this like coaching curriculum that I could do. But it took me another 3 years beyond that to actually start it officially. What really pushed me into it, and well, first of all, I'll say what held me back was essentially those 4 lies. Like, oh, I don't know enough yet. I need to like study it more. I need to research it more. I don't have enough yet. Like, I don't have enough the resources yet. It makes more sense to stay in this financially. All of these things. Or I can't, or I shouldn't, or that would be selfish, or you know, is that really the right thing for me? Really, like not trusting my own intuition. But what really drove me into it is actually tragedy. Like my dad died. And my daughter was born in October of 2016, and my dad died 4 months later in February of 2017. And so I was just in this time of my life where it literally, like, when you become a mom, first of all, your entire world changes, like your identity changes, everything changes. When you lose someone that you love, same thing. Like, it's like, these are like before and after experiences. And it really, with my dad dying, it really reminded me of like the brevity of life. Like looking at his life, and his life was kind of tragic in a lot of ways. And it's like, God, what's the point? You know, what's the point of any of this? And like, he had so much regret. And I journeyed with him in that. And it was really like, I don't want to be like that. Like, I don't want to get to the end of my life and be like, oh, I wish I could have done this. I should have done this. And so many people have regrets at the end of their lives. And I knew this, right? Like, you hear about the top regrets of the dying, but like, I witnessed it firsthand. Like, I saw it and the pain of that. And then also my daughter being born, you know, like of course I was raised in very like that patriarchal atmosphere of like being a stay-at-home mom is like the thing that every woman should do. And I get like railed against that for a while. And I was like, no, that's not me, yada, yada. But I felt this like really weird internal calling. I remember there was like this little book that I would read to her when she was a newborn. And it was like, what daddies do. There was one book about what daddies do, like why daddies are great and why mommies are great. And like the reason why mommies were great was like, you know, mommies give baths and hairdos, and they pick you up from the bus when you get home. And this book would make me angry. That one part about like, they're there waiting for you when you get off the bus. It would make me so mad, because I was like, this is patriarchal bullshit, because here comes the dad home later, blah, blah, blah. But like, there was actually this part of me that wanted that though. And I was like suppressing it and fighting it and yada, yada. But there was a part of me that wanted that. I was like, no, I want to prioritize my relationship with my daughter, not because it's the highest calling of a woman, but because I actually want to. Like, I want to have a good relationship with her. And, you know, dreaming of that I knew that was never going to be possible with the job that I was in at the time. And so I kept telling myself I didn't want it, you know? But these were the things that were kind of just like all coming together to spur me into it. And I finally just pulled the trigger one day and started a Facebook page.
Wow, I love it. I think it's so special and profound that your dad, that you actually, like you said, you shared that with your dad, that he had regrets, that he didn't, I don't know what exactly the regrets were, but that, obviously there were some that he maybe didn't live the life he wanted, or he didn't do things that he wanted to do. And I think I just, I dwell on this a lot. I know we've talked about this, but what is it? I mean, I know that the life that we live now, with all of the stimulation coming at us and all of the expectations, the world that we live in, especially in the Western world, more of the Western, societies, it's like we don't have time to stop and breathe. We don't really give ourselves time to stop and smell the roses, so to speak, and really think about what is it that we want to do. I talk a lot about this. Well, in my own experience, I kind of fell into this career that I'm in.
Mhm.
I did not go to school to be a corporate sales, technical
Right.
salesperson, right? But I kind of fell into it, and 15 years later, it's served me well. It's allowed me to do, travel. It's allowed us to have, my husband and I, to have a certain lifestyle. Um, but it certainly does not, as I'm finding out from working with you and from doing a lot of other work, it is not what I think I was put on this earth to do
Right.
by a long shot. But here I am in my late 40s, and I'm just figuring this out.
Mhm.
So I'd love to for you to kind of dive into a little bit more what you're comfortable with, how you dig that out of your clients. And I know a lot of times people will come to you for weight loss support.
Mhm.
And then do you find that this sort of evolves into, like you said, because it's a coping mechanism, right? It's a coping
Yeah.
mechanism for something that we are not satisfied with in our life, or we're not aligned with in our life. So how do you, in your work, how do you work with your clients to bring them to that sort of awakening or enlightenment? And do you ever have clients that they're so conditioned, or they're so maybe they're so scared
Yeah.
that they just can't quite get there? And just maybe, can you speak to that a little bit? Those
Yeah,
types of
sure.
experiences.
Sure. Yeah. So historically, I have been primarily a weight loss coach, right? But
Mhm.
I think really any kind of coach, like people come to you with this presenting problem, right? They're like, this is my problem, and
Yeah.
maybe as you continue on in this work, people will come to you with this presenting problem of like, I'm unhappy with my job, or I feel unfulfilled. Um, or I want to make more money, or like whatever it happens to be, they'll come to you with this presenting problem. And so for me, obviously I was expecting people to come to me with the presenting problem of weight loss as I'm advertising myself as this weight loss coach. But I know, like,
Yeah.
this is the symptom. This is not the root, right? And so it's not like I surprise people with this. I put this, of course I explain this, like, hey, like there's nothing wrong with you. You're not screwed up. Like this is simply, like you said, a coping mechanism. If we can heal the underlying thing, then we won't need the coping mechanism. If we can actually practice proactive self-care, then we won't need to self-soothe so much with this cheap substitute, which we all have some version of this thing, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, basically, what the kind of the framework that I work with my clients is, first of all, self-awareness. So why are we the way that we are? Right? It is essentially self-awareness. And a lot of times we think we already know the answer to this, but we all have blind spots, right? And so there's so much value in working together with someone who can be a mirror for you. To You just rehearse the same old stories all the time in your head, and you say like, well, this is this because of this, right? But then as soon as you actually have to explain it to someone and you hear yourself talking out loud, you're like, wait a minute, does this even make sense? Like, or
Right.
like, do I even believe this, or whatever it happens to be? And simply holding that space as a mirror for people to continue to gain that self-awareness. And I have so many different tools and assessments that I love to use with my clients to practice self-awareness. And I'm not just talking about the self-awareness that's like the dark, dirty, painful stuff. Like we tend to think of like all of that shadow work as being like of the ultimate value. Like I need to figure out my shit, and heal my shit. Like, but also we have really repressed what I've learned is called the golden shadow. Like the parts of ourselves that are actually so powerful and beautiful and special in our strengths, and we dismiss ourselves for all of these things. Like we really discredit ourselves simply because we have this one presenting problem that we're like, oh my, and we turn it into pervasiveness. Like, well, everything sucks because I'm not at my goal weight, or everything sucks because my job sucks, right? Like, and it's really kind of expanding out of a lot of these cognitive distortions that we have about pervasiveness, like everything sucks, permanence, it's always going to be this way, and personalization, which is like, well, the problem is me, instead of the problem is my environment, or the problem is the conditioning that I inherited that I never actually asked for, right? So this leads me into the second piece, which is self-compassion. So self-awareness is first, but self-compassion is second, because it does us absolutely no good if we are well aware of our own shit, but we think we should be past it by now, or that it's not that bad, or, oh my God, that was 20 years ago. Can you just get over it? Like, or however long
that's
ago.
so familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we cannot change ourselves by hating ourselves. Like, we can't actually change anything through long term, through fear and force and shame. And yet these are the things that we've been given as tools from our upbringing and our society. It's like, how do you change? Fear, force, and shame. Right? And like, we're actually so unfamiliar with love, you know?
Yeah.
Even from the way that we were raised by our parents, like, no, not actually trying to like say that they're bad people or whatever, but they had this toolkit of fear, force, and shame to try to get you to change as a kid. They didn't like your behavior, it was problematic, whatever it happens to be, you're just annoying them. Human nature, right? What do they use? Fear, force, and shame. And so you like internalize this is the way to get myself to change. I'll scare myself, I will shame myself, whatever. And these things are only temporary behavior modification techniques, very well suited for that. If you want temporary behavior modification, go do those things. But if you want actual true transformation from the inside out, it's going to take love, because whatever you resist persists. You know, we've kind of heard that terminology, but it's just so true. And so self-awareness, self-compassion, and then once you've actually arrived at that place of loving it, even though you're like, you know, you don't love what it's doing to you, but you're like, I see actually how this thing that even I'm upset about, like, it has actually served me. It's been a part of my journey. I see where it came from. I see how it was actually adaptive instead of only maladaptive. The way that I'm looking at it is like, this is only harmful, this is bad, I got to get it out. Like, oh no, actually, I can see now how this was actually a very loving, protective part of me that chose to take on this problem, or what I'm calling now as a problem, but it was actually a solution at one point to a different problem. Oh, like the lights are coming on. And then this is what allows you to move into the next phase, which I call release. And we're holding on so tightly to these things, right? These old beliefs, these old habits, these old roles and responsibilities, and like you said, constructs, and realizing that they are optional is phenomenal, right? And so when you can actually release, then you have space in your life to receive what it is that you actually want to call in. But instead, so many of us are spinning our wheels. We're stuck. We have this like future vision, like, I want this thing, but I'm so stuck because of these lies that I've been believing. And once you can detach from that, which is what I love to help my clients do, is essentially get down to the level of beliefs and change those beliefs. There's a lot of nuance to it, you know, certainly, you know, there's a lot to be said for nervous system regulation, and I'm glad that that's coming more to the forefront, but there's a lot more that I do. It's holistic. It's not just mindset work, but it is body, and it is spiritual, and all of the things. But yeah, so I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, for sure. So there's two things. Resist, what you resist persists. That resonates with me so much. And I know we've talked a lot about that, because sort of the opposite, I don't know if the opposite's the right word, but the other way to look at it, or the more maybe positive way to look at it, is what what you put out into the universe. I'm a big believer in, and I've seen this happen. It's crazy. It's almost, it's so woo woo, but it works, but putting what you put out there, whether it's negative or positive, will tend to come back. Right. And I've also heard it explained or said, what you think about will become your reality, right? There's so many different ways to put that concept out there, that it is energy, right? And it's motivation, and it's putting out into the universe what you want. It's not as simple as saying, I want $1 million and then I'm going to, win the lottery. It definitely takes work and it takes thought. But I know for me, and I'm sure for so many other people, and probably some of your clients, just the act of releasing, right? Of letting go of whatever it is that keeps you in that place where you feel stuck or you feel like even comfortable, right? It's kind of a comfort mechanism too, to go back to the
Yeah,
old ways. I
for
say that in
sure.
quotes, to go back to what's safe and familiar,
Yeah.
even when it's not serving you. We tend to do that. I know I tend to do that. I still do that. So speak to that a little bit,
Mhm.
and how you're seeing, I know that there's a lot of psychology around that, and we don't have
Mhm.
to go like down into the weeds, but just for like maybe in layman's terms, someone that, like me, that can understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we break free, or how do we, I mean, no, it's not an overnight process, but how do
Yes.
we, like, once and for all, cut the cords and release and let go of that person, or those versions of ourselves that we know are not serving us, that are not moving us forward, they're not helping us get to where we want to be, whether it's a job or a business or a move or whatever that thing is that we're moving towards, right? How do we ultimately let go?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a good question. And I realized also that I hadn't really fully answered a previous part of your question, which was like, do I sometimes have clients who just kind of can't get there, or they're not there yet? I always add yet, like, because in
Right,
the context
right.
of me working with them, like, we sign up for an initial 8 weeks together. Like, yeah, you're not going to be an entirely different person, in 8 weeks,
Yeah,
but you really will change your life. Like, I promise you that, like, because it's going to create this catalyst inside of you that, it's like once you experience some kind of personal or spiritual growth, you cannot lose that. You can lose the number on the scale. You can lose money. You can lose whatever, right? But you cannot lose a change in your consciousness. And so there's something so powerful about taking that time to invest in yourself and work with a coach or work with a therapist or a mentor, whatever, or even just resourcing yourself with books, like podcasts. Like, it's accessible. Like, these are things that, like, you're like, oh my God, like, once that light comes on, it's like you can't just go back. You might go back to the behavior, right? But you don't go back to that same level of consciousness.
mhm,
Like, that you can't unsee what you've seen.
right.
And you're on this, like, forward trajectory now. So a couple of things. I think it's really important to normalize baby steps, because we tend to see things in movies and media and stories, like these sensationalized success stories, right? I see this with weight loss, all the time, right? It's like,
Yeah,
you see this before and after photo, you have no freaking idea how much that person went through and how many days they were frustrated with themselves for, taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But growth is not linear, and growth is not overnight. And so I think we really need to normalize, like, the messy middle.
yeah. Mhm.
And we don't see that. We don't ever see really good examples of that. And so I think it's important that when you do have a story like I do of changing my life, I really like to share, like, yeah, even when I was in the midst of it, I was like, I still emotionally eat. It's less than it used to be, but I still do. And here's how I helped myself the last time that I dealt with that. And people don't expect, like, perfection. They just love vulnerability and humility and all of it, all of that. Like, we're human. That actually, kind of just perpetuating these sensationalized stories is keeping people stuck more than anything. It is human to approach pleasure and avoid pain. It is human
Yeah,
to prioritize your current self over your future self. It is very human to return to the familiar hell instead of the unfamiliar heaven, right? Like, a lot of our behavior is driven based off of our subconscious beliefs and our physiology, which has a lot to do with how we physically are taking care of our bodies. Like, did you get enough freaking sleep last night? Because if you didn't, you're going to have a toddler brain today, right? And then you're going to
yes,
judge yourself for lacking enough spiritual growth when really you just didn't get enough sleep. Like,
yes.
this is real. Like, are you taking care of did you get out in the sunshine? Like, have you taken a walk, like, in the last week? Like, when's the last time you connected with the earth? Like, are you drinking enough water? Are you taking care of your nutrition? Like, I still very much care about these things because we blame our personhood instead of our physiology, and which has a lot to do with your environment. And so I think that that's really important too. and just remembering like not everything is always spiritual. Like I,
Right.
I think, you know, it's important to focus on the spiritual, but if we over spiritualize everything, then we're just living up here in our upper chakras and neglecting our lower, you know, earthly life. Like we are still human, and it's not bad to be human. It's not better to be, you know, quote unquote divine or spiritual than it is to be human. Like there's a reason we're human, and it's important. So those types of things, and tending to your nervous system regulation is really, really important as well. Just learning like, oh my gosh, I'm outside of my window of tolerance right now because, you know, I haven't eaten or I haven't slept, or I've just been sitting in front of this screen holding my bladder for the last 8 hours,
Yeah.
and my brain is
Guilty.
spinning. I can't calm down. Like, and you're just like totally like in a stressed out state. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to take on anything new. Of course, you're not going to go read your spiritual book when you're in that state. You're not going to want to do anything except return to a nervous system state of regulation. And so what do you do when you're at that point where you're so far outside of your window of tolerance? It's like you're going to reach for the thing that's most familiar, which is probably going to be that coping mechanism that you know, had for all these years. So really, again, practicing self-compassion and awareness that like this is multifaceted. And a lot of times we think that the journey has to be like, oh, I need to like journal more, when really the answer is like, you need to get some sunlight and some protein and some sleep, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always have my roots in, you know, physical health and nutrition
Hmm.
as much as I care about the spiritual stuff too. But like, man, we just beat ourselves up over this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, you know, baby steps, normalize 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because that's called experimentation. Like, look at anyone who's
Hmm.
successful, like they've done that a million times. Failure is part of actual success. Like you cannot divorce failure from success, and to just kind of accept all of that as being part of being human. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said about, you know, you can't spiritualize or, you know, you can't journal your situation away. Sometimes it's just a matter of having a little bit of extra protein, and
Yeah.
that's something that I've been experimenting a lot with lately is, mixing it up, right? Like you
Yeah.
said, experimenting and mixing it up. And, it's been really interesting to see how, I don't want to say instantaneous, but, just how profound the change can be in a short amount of time, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I work from home, so I'm in front of the computer a lot during the day. And if I have back-to-back meetings, I could be that person sitting there for 8 hours with a full bladder, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I start to get in my head
Yeah.
later in the day. I'll start to get in my head, and I'll think, okay, I need to journal, or I need to write down some notes, and then I'll hear your voice in my head. Did you get sunshine? Do you need some more protein?
Yeah.
It's so great. You said something earlier that I was not familiar with, and I jotted it down. I wanted to make sure we touched on it. You used the phrase golden shadows,
Oh
I
yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you expand on that a little bit? That was
Yeah.
intriguing.
Yeah, sure. So the concept of the shadow and the golden shadow actually comes from a psychoanalyst, Carl Jung. And
Okay.
it's spelled Jung, Carl Jung. And he's really famous in like psychology. For anybody that's had a background in psychology or whatever, they'd probably be familiar with Jung. But yeah, essentially, he kind of created this concept of the shadow as any part of yourself that you've been taught is problematic or unacceptable, um, essentially for you to be able to get your needs met and move through the world. And it's not necessarily always overt, like explicit, that someone has said, I don't like this about you. But you'll just notice as a young child, like, man, if I ask too many questions, my mom gets upset with me. Or, you know, so like I need to alter my behavior, or I need to be the funny one, or I need to be the smart one, or I need to be yada, yada. And so, of course, we can see a lot of this in work with the Enneagram, you know, that we can see the concept of the shadow. You know, and kind of understanding like our underlying belief systems, you know, things like this.
Hmm.
Uh, Internal family systems is another thing that is becoming really popular, where essentially it's like we have different parts inside of us. And, you know, we have like these protector parts, and then we have these like exiled parts. It's essentially like any part of you that you internalized as like, oh, people don't like this about me, so I need to repress it. And that's what you do. You repress it, and you no longer tap into that part of yourself consciously. But subconsciously, this part of you never goes away, and it has needs that needs to be met. and comes out at the most inopportune times, doesn't it? Right. So,
Yes.
so like, we have a need for power and control. We have a need for love and belonging. We have a need for safety and security. And let's just say that, you grew up with a parent who was very power oriented and very domineering, and you're a child that you also have a need for power and control. We all want to have some autonomy and some say, and yet you felt like you needed to suppress that part of you. So then the part of you that has been suppressed with power and control maybe shows up in very rebellious ways, like not following your diet plan or not following your spending budget or whatever it might be. And to realize, like to work with someone who can help you tap into that and be like, how is this actually a good part of you?
Yeah.
Right. Even though it's in your shadow, right? It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's dark or evil or harmful. It's just a part of you that has been repressed outside of your level of consciousness because you've been taught that's not good by someone else. The golden shadow is kind of, it's the same concept, but it tends to be focused more on what we would call positive aspects. And so I'll give an example for me in my life, like playfulness is something that I had repressed. As a child, I was very much raised by a very anxious father. And so anytime I would be doing anything fun, like rollerblading or skating or swimming, it was always just like, be careful, be careful, be careful. And so for me, I learned that to keep things calm and to maintain that loving relationship, I needed to just not take risks and not be silly and playful, right? And so I started to become a really serious kid, like a really academically driven kid, and this was pleasing, right? And so I repressed my natural playfulness and my adventurousness. And so we might hear those adjectives and be like, oh, well, those are positive things. Exactly. Like that's the golden shadow. And so for me to be able to tap back into those parts of myself and to integrate all of that has so much to do with actually being able to create a life that you really like. Whether you might think of that as a negative quality or whether you think of that as a positive quality, it's necessary to become whole in order to create the life that you really like.
So is the goal to make all of our shadows golden golden shadows instead of,
Yeah.
I mean, because of course we all have habits and we all have things that we've suppressed, but they're a part of us for a reason, right? And whether we have a negative connotation or a positive connotation, it seems like ultimately we would want to have a positive connotation to see how it can fit into our life in a beautiful way, in a serving way. It doesn't have to be at the forefront of our life. It doesn't have to be the main thing that is who we are, who we put out in the world, but at least we pivot and we see it in a positive way. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I'd say so. At least to be totally honest, where my mind is going is that the ultimate is actually to stop seeing things in terms of positive or negative at all, or in good or bad at all. And it just is, it just is part of reality. It is to be human. That when we are just here in this human experience, there will always be misunderstandings. There will always be judgments. There will always be failures. There will always be these things. And like, we might think of those as unpleasant, right? But it doesn't mean that they're bad. And it doesn't mean that they're negative, because that's all relative, right? So it might in the moment of the experience, I like to use the word pleasant or unpleasant or comfortable or uncomfortable maybe, because really we're just moving out of a value judgment into describing the sensation of it. Like, oh, this feels, uncomfortable. This feels difficult. This is making me cry. This is causing me physical pain, whatever it might be. And that's what else could we call it, other than that? Because some other person might experience the same thing as you, like a roller coaster. And they'd be like, that was amazing. And you'd be like, that was terrifying. Right. Like, and so it's all relative. One person's calling it good. One person's calling it bad. But we could agree on maybe the sensations of it. Like, oh, that made my heart beat faster. And it made I got goosebumps and whatever. Like, sensation is actually the reality. But yeah, it's interesting because we talk about these things and we can get really metaphysical.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but it's true. I love the perspective of, like you said, it is what it is, and take away the value judgment, which is obviously the hardest thing to do because of our conditioning and our experiences. And Do you think that it is possible um, to go through life? I mean, to be born into this world and to be, to have a childhood and to have an adolescent, go into young adulthood and go through your life and actually be in that place where you don't see everything as a value judgment. You just see things as it is. I know that's to me, that makes me think of Buddhism and sort of the
Yeah.
way that the Buddhist um, would advise. But for most of us, we don't have that ability, right? Because we have
Yeah.
parents that have their own shit,
Yeah.
that they have things that they project on us, whether they mean to or not,
Yeah.
right? And they have their own anxiety and their boundaries. Um, but do you think that it's possible? I mean, I feel like there's a shift
Mm.
definitely happening where,
Mhm.
I mean, I can see it in my generation, the way that they're raising their kids, like
Yeah.
my sisters, right? My sister and my sister-in-law, they're raising their kids completely differently than how we were raised. And we've
Yeah.
talked about this, right? Where they're allowing some of this to be more part of their parenting. Maybe
Yeah.
not on such a metaphysical level, but at least on a fundamental level where they're allowing their children to be in touch with their feelings and to, express their feelings and to not feel so constrained or defined by what the parents want. It's more, I mean, there's a balance there, right? But
Yeah.
what is your take on that? Or is it like
Yeah.
a lost cause?
No, it's such an interesting question because I don't think it's a lost cause because we totally can see consciousness evolving. Like
Mm,
not just individually, like you've seen your consciousness evolve, like your personal growth evolution. And then we
mhm.
can also see it in society when you read history, right? We can be like,
Uh,
oh yeah, the punishment for this crime used to be like chopping someone's head off.
yeah,
And now,
yeah, that's true.
you know, even in my daughter's school, like they have something called the calming corner, right? And so before, like that never existed. It was just like go to the principal's office. But now
Yes.
it's like, you did something disruptive in class, like they're like, how are you doing? Do you need to go take some deep breaths in the calming corner? Like, and
Yeah.
that's so beautiful to me. Like we are totally making progress as a society and with parenting and things like that. So I think that we are always like on a trajectory towards that, I guess what we might call peace. Like, Judaism would call it shalom. Like Buddhism would have a different word for it. Christianity would have a different word for it, but we're always on that journey towards that. And I think we catch glimpses of it and we know that it's like our true nature. And yet I do think that to be human is to experience contrast. And that's part of what allows you to like your life is this illusion that you didn't have something and now you have it,
Mm,
but you enjoy it because you once had the illusion that you didn't have it, right? Or the struggle of growth, right? Like the reward when you finally succeed at the thing feels so good because it was a struggle to get there.
yeah.
And what I do think is very possible is not layering stories on top of it. So I like to use this phrase, and I learned it from my coach, Simone Soul, but it's called clean pain, dirty pain. And so I don't think that it's possible to go through life without pain.
Yeah.
Clean pain that is built into the human experience, experiencing failure, misunderstanding, frustration, the pain between where you are versus where you want to be, and the emotions that involves, grief, death, loss, all of these things are universal human experiences that I don't think anyone can escape from, or that we should try to. If we only ever experience like the magnificent side of life instead of just the mundane all the time, like if you never felt bored, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
then you wouldn't be able to feel true pleasure, and probably you would be like the biggest narcissist in the world and be labeled as insane, quite honestly.
Right.
But these things keep us grounded, right?
Yeah.
But dirty pain is the story that we layer on top of the clean pain. Like if somebody were to lose a child, lose a pregnancy, right? So you're going to experience clean pain in that. We have no freaking idea why, right? But then
Mm,
our brain starts to offer us these stories about why, and even the stories that our brain is offering to us is trying to help us to make sense of something that feels senseless, But a lot of times these stories involve, it just adds more pain to it. And that's what we call dirty pain. So it's like, oh, God didn't trust me to become a mother. God knows that I wouldn't have been the best mother for that soul. And now you're adding shame to yourself. And even that's optional. And so I do think that it's possible to learn to move through life without any dirty pain. I definitely think that's possible.
I love that. I love that. And it's just, and the time that we've worked together, I really try to, like you said, not to add a story to, you know, if it's something in my businesses that maybe I didn't reach a goal, or, you know, one of my events was a flop or whatever, I really am finding that I'm just telling myself, okay, it was just a bad day, or it is what it is, or it's too hot, nobody wants to come out, you know? And it's been life-changing. It really has. It's just, sorry, I'm gonna put my coffee down. So I know we're kind of getting to the end of the hour. I didn't want to, I did want to be conscious of your time. One of the things that I like to ask is, so kind of wrapping this into the topic of, you know, doing what you love, doing that, finding your passion and doing it in your life, which you are just the most beautiful example of that. And you just emanate, you know, fulfillment and love, and that you just light up when you talk about, when you do the work that you do. And I'm just so appreciative to know you. But for those that are, maybe feeling a little bit stuck, you know, and they have this calling in their life, they know that there's something that they want to do, and maybe they already know what it is, they just don't really know how to start. What is like a piece of advice, or a couple of good pieces of advice that you would give them to help motivate, inspire, you know, also keeping them realistic, you know, and practical? What would be your take on that?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, I loved that you sent me this question earlier, because it gave me some time to like really think about it. And I first want to say that entrepreneurship is something that I am super passionate about, because what is entrepreneurship, right? Like if you were to ask somebody, what is it? I mean, what does it just mean? Like you own your own business, you don't pay the same taxes, you know, whatever. But for me, from like a metaphysical perspective, like entrepreneurship means being the creator and the author of your own story. Like you own the story of this business, right? And you're free to make all the decisions out of alignment. And I want to offer that this can simply be a mindset, that it doesn't have to actually look like, you know, you only working for yourself. And that is the ultimate version of success. But there's this terminology that I learned called being an entrepreneur. And I really loved this because it's essentially having an entrepreneurial mindset internally inside of the organization that you're choosing to work with. I don't like to say work for, or, you know, work in, but like you're choosing to work with this company or this organization. Like, yeah, you're a W-2 employee. Okay. But you can still have an entrepreneurial mindset. And the way to go about this is realizing like you're still the creator and author of your story. And this company is serving your mission, not you only serving it. Ideally, it would be both, right? It's a partnership. You're co-creating together. You have this shared mission. But I think where we start to feel all of the undesired feelings and feeling stuck is when we feel like I'm just serving this company's mission. Like I am in the passenger seat of someone else's car. I am making someone else's dreams come true and not my own. And that is where it feels like such a disconnect. And we're like, I can't take this anymore. But it actually is very possible to have alignment of like, I have an entrepreneurial, you know, mindset. Like this company, I actually really want to work for this company. It serves my overall mission. And maybe I'm doing this other thing on the side that I also really, really love. But there's absolutely no shame in still being an entrepreneur and working for another company when there is alignment, and that you're still the author and the creator of your story. So I want to offer that. And I want to also offer, before I give the advice that I want to offer, another really beautiful, life-changing thing that helped me in my entrepreneurship was to hear Elizabeth Gilbert explain, and by the way, she's an author and just like a renowned, you know, speaker and everything. She wrote the book Big Magic, which, oh my gosh, I can't recommend enough. But years ago, this was probably like 10 years ago, I read a Facebook post by her, and like it comes up in my memories once a year, and I'm so grateful for it every time I reread it and I like share it with whoever. But she explained the differences between a hobby, a job, a career, and a vocation. Have you heard of this before?
No, I haven't. I'm taking notes.
It's so good. So a hobby is something that you just enjoy doing and you don't make any money from it. You do it simply for the pleasure of doing it. And this is not to be underestimated. Like now we think we need to monetize everything that we enjoy,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
But if the point of life is to like your life, chances are you're not going to monetize most of what you like. So just do it because you
Yeah.
like it, right? And to allow even your side passion, like that for it to not make money doesn't mean that it's worthless. Like
Right.
it's so valuable just because you like it, even if it is your hobby. And I totally understand, like, there's people out there that's like, it's not, I don't know what they call it, but you're not an entrepreneur unless you're making money. Like, okay, whatever. Like
Yeah.
how does that
Yeah.
make you feel? Like if
Right.
that's serving you, if that's motivating you, you're like, okay, cool, like some tough love, good. But if you're just like, if that flattens you, like there is another way to look at life. And there's so much value in doing something simply because you enjoy doing it. And it's okay if it stays a hobby forever, or if sometimes it makes money and sometimes it doesn't, and you just keep doing it regardless. Like
Yeah.
it's totally fine. A job is something, it's doing a task for money. So it's simply like me trading time for money, right? And you don't have to like it, but you do it because of the usefulness of it. Like I need money to pay my bills so that I can live a life that I like.
Right.
And that also is completely okay, right? Everybody, it's okay to have a job and for it to just be that, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't make you less of a person or less of a spiritually evolved person or less of a successful, growth oriented, none of that. Like we don't have to layer dirty pain on top of these things, right? So it's okay to just have a job, and it's okay to work a job while you are pursuing your side passion. And I'm going to give another terminology to that right now in a second. But career is basically like a long-term job that you it's like a higher level of a relationship, right? Like if a job is kind of just like meaningless sex, like to give an example, like it's like
Yeah.
we're hooking up here, like we're
Yeah.
getting in bed
Yeah.
together and it's mutually beneficial, okay? But like a career is like no, like I really like you, like, and I want to be in a long-term relationship with you. And much like a marriage, you should either really love it or don't have it. you know this is something that you're passionate about enough to make sacrifices for it. And
Do you think you have to have purpose in your career? You think there needs to be a sense of purpose?
yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you have to have a sense of mission and purpose with it.
Okay.
That you would be willing, the same way that you do for someone that you love and you really believe in, and you're committed to, that at times you rearrange your life for it. Like you see
Okay.
people like delaying travel plans for it, or even family, like I'm waiting to have a baby until I reach this career goal, or whatever it might be, like, and that's okay. Like
Mhm.
that's their career and that's actually really important to them. And even choosing career over, something more family oriented or whatever. Like these are just values, and everybody has different values, and it's not right or wrong, but a career definitely has a sense of purpose and mission to it. And then there's a vocation. And to differentiate between a vocation and a career, the vocation you might not actually get paid for, but a vocation is a sense of calling. It is like this whisper inside of your heart from the universe of like, this is what you are meant to do. Like it feels sacred. You feel like you come alive whenever you are doing this thing. And for me, like that was coaching for sure. Like
Mhm.
whenever I would be, and even before I called it coaching, whenever I'd be one-on-one with an individual, I would feel this third force between us, this magic between us. And some people would call that God or the Holy Spirit. That's certainly terminology that I used for it, but just the presence of love and this force. And really, it's like this transcendent experience of like, I felt most alive whenever I was coaching, even before I was ever called a coach or certified as a life coach, or made any money as a coach. That felt, and it will always be a calling to me, even though it might look different at different points in my life. And, Elizabeth Gilbert was sharing basically that her calling is to be a writer. And she was a writer long before writing ever became her job. it was always her vocation. And so just to differentiate between that, yes, it is like your main calling and mission in life. And yes, it will evolve and all those things, but it might never be something that you get paid for. You might work a job while you're pursuing this vocation as a volunteer. Like, and that's no less meaningful, no less fulfilling. Like, if you want to monetize it, great, but you don't have to in order to be like a full human, beautiful, pleasurable life. Like, so it's okay. So to differentiate between these things, I have always found to be really, really powerful. And I think it can be really clarifying for some of the advice that I would like to give. So the main advice that I want to give is to, and I shared this with you, but focus on your who and your why more than your what and your how. And so a lot of times when we start this like side passion or think I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to start a business, like we focus on the what and the how. What's my offer? How am I going to make money? You know, and those are that's the main driver. And then when you think about that, you think, well, what would make money? What would people want? What is in demand? You know, and like you're starting from this place of like very like logistical. And when this happens, it no longer becomes actually the vocation. It becomes you essentially mimicking what you're doing in the corporate job that you feel unfulfilled by, because you're like, I'm serving the mission of this other thing, right? And so you're giving it this life force of like, the public demands this, the public wants this, this is oversaturated over here, so I can't do this, so I need to go do this other thing that makes more sense, and yada yada, because the ultimate goal is the what and the how, you know? But you're just going to mimic the exact same state that you're in right now if you prioritize that, and then you become basically just as stuck, but you feel stuck probably even more. You probably have even less boundaries, you know, because now you're an entrepreneur and you don't have a consistent safe paycheck. It like literally demands on like, oh, this person just messaged me at midnight, I need to respond right away or I might lose them as a customer, and like all of these things, like if you're just only focused on the what and the how. But if you focus on the who and the why, and the who, I don't mean your audience, I don't mean your client, I mean focusing on yourself. Who are you? What do you want? How is this something that you like? And why any of this? Why are you doing it? Right? Like, why are you passionate about this? And so your story and your mission, you have to focus on this and share this. Otherwise, you will literally just recreate the thing that you're trying to run away from. And it will make your business that much more successful. And when I say successful, I mean in alignment, meaning it feels like mutual reciprocity, an equal energy exchange. You could be doing, again, your zone of excellence for someone as an entrepreneur. I could be someone's virtual assistant and be a kick-ass virtual assistant, and I would be totally miserable doing it because I'm not operating in my zone of genius, right? Like, and then I would be like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, but it's a job. It's not my vocation, right? And that would be okay, right? But I'm talking to the people right now who are like, I want to start getting paid for my vocation, right? Like, and this is kind of the advice that I would give to you. You have to focus on the who and the why. And so a lot of people would probably be like, well, I don't know who I am. I don't even know. Like, I just know I want to get away from this, right? And I want to figure out what I'm passionate about. I have no idea where to start, right? And so it starts with self-discovery, with self-awareness, with compassion first, and kind of getting clarity. Like, is this going to be a job, a career, a vocation, or a hobby? And like, try to suss those things out. And I would recommend like starting with personal growth work before you start your business. Like, work with a therapist, work with a coach, read books about your strengths and understand your values and understand your human design and understand who you are and what you're meant to be doing here before you go try to start this thing that you're going to give all of your time and talent to, right? Another piece of advice is don't romanticize this and think that it's going to solve all your problems and deficits. I think it's the same way that when we romanticize like a dating relationship or like a relationship with a partner, like if we come to like, I'm incomplete and this person is going to complete me and my life is going to be so perfect as soon as I get married, or just like whatever, like we're romanticizing that, and you're placing a huge burden on that partner to be your everything, like to be the solution to all of your problems and to be your source of love and esteem and belonging and self-worth and entertainment and safety and security and like all of these things like that. Nobody can do that. And like your business can't do that for you either. And so to treat it like it's its own entity, to treat it like it's the spirit of your business and you are co-creating together with this spirit, like this mission that I have, and Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this in Big Magic, but she says, you know, like there are ideas that are like spirits and entities out there, and they're just tapping people on the shoulder saying like, we want to be birthed, we want to come into the world, like this invention wants to come into the world, or this idea, this like positive parenting technique wants to come into the world. And it's just tapping all these people saying, is it you that I'm going to come through? Is it you? And some people
Oh, I
say
love
yes, and
that.
some people say no.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. But to be like, yeah, if I'm going to start this positive parenting coaching thing, let's just say that that was the mission that I wanted to go through. And like, of course, I feel totally dedicated to that. But to be like, no, this is something of its own. Like, this is like something that's going to like change lives. And I'm co-creating together with this spirit that also has its own mission of, you know, creating a different kind of parent, you know? Another piece of advice is to move at the pace of your nervous system and to not judge yourself again for like keeping a job temporarily or even forever. And to attend to your nervous system. Like people are like, oh, I can't do video, so I can't be an entrepreneur. Like I can't put my face up on social media, so I can't be an entrepreneur. Like, okay, like first of all, you never have to do that, right? Like there are plenty of businesses that run without anyone ever seeing the face of the owner or just whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing, there are no musts. Like it must be done in this exact way. You're going to hear a lot of conventional advice, but if it rubs you the wrong way to the essence of your true self and your soul, gosh, don't do it. But also recognize that it's going to rub your nervous system the wrong way right now because you're still working on your nervous system and kind of attending to yourself and taking deep breaths and dipping one toe into the video. Like, you know, maybe you make, you know, just for a second, you put like, a professional photo of yourself up instead of a video, you know, like, and you're
Right.
like, okay, I didn't die, you know, like people saw my face, like whatever it might be, but like, little by little, allowing your nervous system to feel safe with this next step instead of just like, I don't know, listening to this conventional guru bro advice. And there's a lot of it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that it's not helpful. It is balanced with kind of the feminine energy of like realizing like you have to nurture yourself. No one else is going to nurture you in this, just you.
Yeah.
And then remembering that people choose who they know, like, and trust. There's a million people selling this exact MLM product. And why do they choose you? Because they know you, they like you, and they trust you. And that's because you are spending time not only talking about the how and the what when you're out on your social media or your marketing or whatever, but you're sharing your insights into the world and you're sharing your life and you're sharing your opinions and you're behind the scenes and all of this. And again, you know, like, it's not a must that you need to like show your entire personal life. Like it's okay for you to set your boundaries, but also realizing that people are coming to you because of your unique perspective and your unique passion. Like I could, you know, still be just as passionate and tell you all of this stuff without ever showing my family on social media. But, you know, it's okay to have boundaries and be guarded with whatever feels right and safe for you. But also realizing like there has to be a personal touch to it, and people have to understand your why, because that's what they're really getting behind. So have an offer, but always in the context of who you are and why you're so passionate.
Yeah. And I think also it's okay to be vulnerable and authentic. I think there's so much out there that is not.
Yeah.
And so sharing what, like you said, what you're comfortable with, but to show some vulnerability and some authenticity and not to try, it's definitely not there is not a one size fits all to becoming an entrepreneur or running a business. It can't be. And so that's why I think that I just resonated with you so much, because the way that you coach and the way that you inspire and challenge even, I mean, I think that's just as important as lifting up your clients and supporting them. I think challenging them and making them or, you know, encouraging them to rethink and reframe. That's just as important as the others, all of it. Right.
Yeah.
And I can definitely tell, since I've been working with you, that I'm approaching my businesses in a different way. It might not be the way that everyone else is, or that is even when I work with my mentors, the way that they're maybe encouraging that I do it, but it's the way that I align with and the way that makes me feel comfortable. And even the way that I'm starting to work with my podcast and some of the people that I'm reaching out to, it's just been life-changing. So I appreciate you so much,
Mm.
Jess, and I'm not going to cry. But
Crying
no,
is good. It's cleansing.
but it
Yeah.
has been such, I mean, like I said, it's just been life-changing working with you. And
Mhm.
I want you to tell everyone how to get in touch with you, how to reach out to you if they want to explore and think about working with you. I
Mhm.
know that you give sort of a consult call, which I highly encourage anyone to jump on a call and talk through with you. It's just, it's, again, it's life changing. But yeah, tell everybody how they can reach you and contact you and find
Yeah.
you.
Yes, for sure. You can find me on all social media platforms at Wild Wellness with Jess. So I'm on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn with my name. So it's Jessica Lynn Reid. Lynn is with a E. But you can, of course, find all of my social links on my website, which is probably easier to remember, Jess-Reid, that's REID.com. And I also put up all of my offerings for coaching on there. Really, I can coach around anything, but my favorite things to coach people surrounding is healing relationship with food and body, with or without the goal of weight loss, and healing your relationship with money, healing your relationship with your faith, really getting back in touch with who you are if you feel like you've lost yourself, discovering your spiritual gifts and receiving abundance for it. Maybe that looks like entrepreneurship, maybe it doesn't, but I'm really passionate about all of that. So yeah, if that's ringing a bell, I'm your girl. So I'd love to do a free curiosity call, like Jen mentioned. We'll just jump on Zoom for like 30 to 60 minutes, get to know you better. I am not pushy by any means. Like, I want you to honor your intuition and the way that you make decisions. And you're going to get some type of value, probably a free resource from me that I'll connect you with on that call, no matter what. And then I also have a podcast. So it will be changing the name of it probably by the time this episode airs. So you can find my podcast, Wild Wellness with Jess, as well.
Awesome. And I'll put all of this in the show notes as well. So thank you, Jess, so much. It's been a pleasure. And I know we'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Yes, of course.